What if a simple moment at a hotel check-in desk could unravel hidden prejudices, trigger a viral scandal, and offer a powerful lesson in kindness? Picture this: a rainy New York night. Sandra Bullock, dressed in a hoodie and sneakers, walks unnoticed into an exclusive hotel, seeking peace before an important event. But when a dismissive receptionist judges her by appearances, a silent power struggle unfolds, until Keanu Reeves steps in, shifting the entire dynamic. What happens when fame collides with everyday arrogance? How can one unexpected moment reveal the fragility of reputation and the strength of simple decency? Dive into a story of assumptions, humility, and the ripple effect of standing up for what's right, even when no one's watching. Join us in reflecting on this true story. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell notification for more daily stories like this. Share your thoughts in the comments and let us know where you are what. For we would love to hear from you. The streets of New York glistened under the relentless November rain, each puddle reflecting the city's vibrant glow. Among the clusters of people hurrying to escape the downpour, one woman walked alone, her hooded sweatshirt pulled low and a simple black cap shielding part of her face. She was Sandra Bullock, though on that night, she wished to remain unnoticed. She had flown in for an important event the following morning and hoped for some peace. Yet peace was never a guarantee for someone recognized worldwide. She stepped through the revolving doors of La Majestic, one of New York's most exclusive hotels. Immediately, the scent of jasmine and vanilla welcomed her, a fragrant signal of the luxury within. Polished marble floors, ornate crystal chandeliers, and a softly playing piano all spoke of wealth and prestige. This was a place where high-profile clients could expect discretion, not side eyes. Sandra approached the reception desk, her shoulders heavy with travel fatigue, but her mind alert. She knew all too well that first impressions could be deceptive, especially when you were dressed in casual sneakers, jeans, and a sweatshirt. Behind the desk stood a young woman named Heather. The subtle tightness in Heather's posture and the scrutiny in her gaze made it clear she didn't approve of guests who didn't fit the upscale image. As Sandra drew closer, Heather's expression barely concealed her immediate judgment. She greeted Sandra with polite words, but the underlying tone betrayed her suspicion. "Good evening. How may I assist you?" Heather asked in a measured voice, her brow slightly furrowed. Sandra maintained a calm tone. "I have a reservation under Sandra Net." A flicker of confusion passed over Heather's face. She typed into her computer system, eyebrows knitting together. The name wasn't instantly recognizable to her, and the casual clothing certainly didn't match her assumptions about La Majestic's typical clientele. Heather cleared her throat. "I'm not finding any VIP reservations for that name." The words sounded helpful on the surface, yet her voice carried an undercurrent of disapproval. Sandra suppressed a sigh and offered to show the email confirmation on her phone. Instead of glancing at the screen right away, Heather raised the phone to eye level slowly, as though bracing for something more dramatic. Sandra tried to remain patient. She was no stranger to extra scrutiny. Her fame often brought unwanted attention. But tonight, wearing simple clothes, she seemed to have landed in a situation she had hoped to avoid. Heather cast a glance at the phone, but her reaction was less about verifying the reservation and more about challenging Sandra's legitimacy. Sandra felt the tension building. Across the lobby, a few guests began to sense the friction. Whispers fluttered by the grand piano, and one man at the bar discreetly turned his gaze toward the check-in desk, unperturbed by the subtle spectacle. Heather finally placed the phone down. "I'm not seeing any matching reservation, Ms. Annette," she said coolly. "This hotel caters to a very exclusive clientele. Perhaps there's been a mix-up, or you might prefer something more affordable down the street." A hush fell over the immediate area as those words hung in the air. Sandra felt her face grow warm, though not from embarrassment as much as from a surge of frustration. She met Heather's gaze steadily. The receptionist had erected an invisible wall, one that said, "You don't belong here." Yet Heather had no idea whom she was addressing, nor the significance of the last name, Annette. used precisely to maintain a low profile. Sandra tried once more. Please check the system properly. I made this reservation weeks ago. Heather pretended to type, but Sandra caught the reflection in a nearby polished surface. The computer's home screen hadn't changed. This wasn't a glitch. It was a deliberate power play. The air grew thicker when a faint click sounded from somewhere in the lounge. Someone taking a photo. A man at the bar lowered his phone, feigning indifference. Sandra's heart quickened. This was the very exposure she'd wanted to avoid. Suddenly, the heavy glass doors to the hotel swung open. Wind and raindrops rushed in, causing the security guard to straighten. In stepped a figure in a perfectly tailored black suit, shoes damp from the rain. His commanding presence stole everyone's attention as he scanned the lobby. Then, his gaze landed on Sandra. Keanu Reeves had arrived, and Heather's carefully curated world was about to be turned upside down. The instant Keanu Reeves entered, the mood in La Majestic shifted. Heads turned, conversations dropped to hushed tones, and all eyes settled on him. Even Heather, moments ago so smug, seemed to freeze. Keanu's polished shoes tapped softly against the marble, each step echoing in the tension-filled silence. He moved with calm deliberation until he stood beside Sandra. "Is everything all right here?" he asked, voice low, yet carrying clearly in the hush of the lobby. Heather's posture stiffened. It was impossible not to recognize him. Even if his name hadn't been uttered, his face and aura were unmistakable. She shot a nervous glance between him and Sandra, still clad in her casual attire. Suddenly, the puzzle pieces snapped into place, and Heather realized the magnitude of her mistake. Sandra, crossing her arms, gave Keanu a small, grateful smile. She didn't need to explain much. His quick, observant gaze took in Heather's expression, the uneasy guests at the bar, and the phone that had just snapped a furtive picture. Keanu turned his attention to Heather, who was now typing frantically on her keyboard, truly searching this time. No more illusions or stalling. Heather's voice wavered. "Mr. Reeves? I'm just verifying Ms. Annette's reservation. Must be some glitch." The word glitch sounded hollow after the performance she'd just put on. Some onlookers, including a couple by the fireplace, exchanged knowing looks. It was obvious Heather had been selectively unhelpful. Glitch," Keanu replied, calm but razor-sharp. "Is that what you call it?" His question reverberated. Heather flushed under the weight of the unspoken accusation. She tried to speak, but embarrassment strangled her words. Finally, she managed to produce a new record on the screen. "Here it is," she declared, forcing a smile. "Sandra Annette, my apologies for the confusion." Sandra exhaled softly, though she remained composed. She could sense that her traveling companion was not done addressing Heather's behavior. In a room full of expensive suits and well-heeled guests, the tension had crystallized around the reception desk. Keanu, still poised, leaned in slightly. "And if I hadn't shown up, would you have found the reservation at all?" Heather paled further, unable to dodge the pointed question. Her colleagues pretended to busy themselves, but their averted eyes and nervous energy confirmed that everyone recognized how badly she had erred. The manager, Mr. Williams, a tall man in a tailored navy suit, rushed onto the scene. His features tightened at the sight of two major stars facing a humiliated receptionist. "Good evening, Mr. Reeves, Ms. Annette," he began, stumbling a bit when he realized who Ms. Annette truly was. Sandra could almost see the gears in his head turning, connecting Annette to Sandra Bullock. Regardless, he pressed on, forcing a professional smile. "I'm the hotel manager. Please forgive this inconvenience. Let me personally ensure you have our best suite and anything else you need." Heather gulped and tried to look busy, as though merely assisting with a little confusion. But everyone saw through it. The manager's expression made it clear that Heather would face repercussions. While some guests watched on with sympathy for Sandra, others followed the unfolding drama like spectators at a stage play. Camera phones dangled at waist level, capturing the moment in short. Shaky videos or furtive snapshots. Sandra felt the tension in her chest begin to ease. Though she disliked causing a scene, She also knew that people in Heather's position often judged appearances harshly. This incident was simply one more reminder of how quick individuals could be to deny others basic respect. Her hope was that the lesson would resonate beyond just her own personal convenience. Keanu kept a hand lightly at Sandra's elbow, guiding her away from the desk. "Let's get you settled," he suggested, but before they left, he gave Heather one last measured look. Neither angry nor gloating, just a silent statement that her behavior was wholly unacceptable. Heather's shoulders sagged, her composure crumbling. The manager led Sandra and Keanu toward the elevator, profusely apologizing the entire way. "We value privacy and exceptional service," he insisted. "This is not how we treat our guests. Please, allow me to make this right." They stepped into the elevator, the shining doors reflecting three uneasy figures. Sandra nodded politely. "We appreciate your willingness to fix the problem," she said softly. "But respect should never depend on who a person might be." When the elevator doors slid shut, the tension in the lobby seemed to ripple outward. Guests exhaled. Conversations resumed in hushed, excited tones. A man near the bar, phone still in hand, debated posting the photo he had taken. The couple by the fireplace, Emily and David, shook their heads at one another, marveling at the surreal spectacle. Meanwhile, Heather remained at her station, her mind buzzing with regret, humiliation, and dread. She could feel her colleagues' stealing glances. "How could I have known?" she muttered to herself, though she knew deep inside that was no excuse. Even if Sandra Bullock hadn't been famous, the way she treated a simply dressed guest was unprofessional at best and cruel at worst. And so, in the space of a few minutes, Heather learned that an unassuming figure in a hoodie and sneakers might very well be someone who could expose the narrowness of her own assumptions. The immediate repercussions were still unfolding. Glancing at her manager's office door, Heather gulped, wondering if her career at La Majestic had just come crashing to an end. In a sumptuous suite perched high above New York City, Sandra Bullock dropped her hoodie onto a velvet-upholstered chair. The light from a crystal chandelier revealed her tired eyes. Keanu Reeves, shaking raindrops off his black suit jacket, gave her a sympathetic look. "You okay?" he asked, his voice gentle in the hush of the room. Sandra took a moment to respond, letting the quiet envelop her. "I'll be fine," she finally replied. "I've dealt with worse, believe me, but it still stings every time it happens." She paused, recalling numerous instances when people judged her by appearances or dismissed her out of hand. "Sometimes I just want to feel normal, to walk around without a spotlight." Keanu understood. He also knew that the older he got and the more recognized he became, the fewer truly private spaces existed. Tonight, though, a line had been crossed. "Heather's arrogance," he said softly. "She aimed it at the wrong person. But what if it had been a regular guest with no resources and no friend like me to step in? That's what bothers me most." Sandra nodded. "Exactly. People deserve respect, regardless of who they are or how they look." She sank into the plush bed, exhaling as though trying to release the tension still lodged in her shoulders. "At least the manager seems intent on making it right. Not that it fixes the fundamental issue." "True," Keanu agreed. "Somebody who judges others so quickly will probably learn a harsh lesson tonight." He glanced toward the window where rain continued its steady descent. But maybe she'll realize how damaging her biases can be. Meanwhile, downstairs, Heather's crisis was just beginning. The new shift at the front desk had arrived, and she was expected to train the incoming receptionist. Yet the moment she tried to regain her composure and do her job, the manager, Mr. Williams, beckoned her over. His expression was grim. Word of her actions had spread, and he had witnessed the entire spectacle himself. "Heather, in my office." "Now," he said curtly. She followed him through a plain white door marked "Staff Only," her stomach churning. The hallway beyond was cold and unadorned, a far cry from the opulent lobby. "Mr. Williams led her into a compact office lined with filing cabinets and one large window overlooking the city. He closed the door, letting the tension build before speaking. "Heather," he began, voice low and controlled. "What in the world were you thinking?" She tried to sputter out an explanation about confusion in the reservation system, but he cut her off, pointing at his computer screen. Social media is already lighting up with a photo of you refusing service to Sandra Bullock. Not to mention, this involves Keanu Reeves, who apparently rescued the situation. Heather's face burned. I didn't recognize her, and she was dressed so. She stopped herself, realizing she was about to reinforce the very bias that got her into trouble. The manager's eyes flashed with disappointment. You know the standards of La Majestic, he said. We never judge. We treat every guest with courtesy. But you went the other way. You humiliated one of the most famous actresses in the world, and right in front of another world-renowned actor. Do you have any idea what this means for our reputation? She knew, and that knowledge felt like a weight pressing down on her chest. Mr. Williams, I can change. I made a mistake, Heather pleaded, her voice cracking. He ran a hand over his brow. I'm not sure I can salvage your position here. The ownership is already discussing disciplinary action, likely your immediate termination. Heather's legs went weak. She gripped the back of a chair to steady herself. Please, she whispered. I'll do anything to fix this. But she faltered, unsure of how to promise something she'd never had to deliver before. Genuine humility. Mr. Williams let out a frustrated sigh. Go home for the evening, he ordered. I'll be in touch once a final decision is made. Dazed, Heather slipped through the staff exit, stepping into the drizzling rain. It felt like a metaphor for her unraveling career. She recalled the moment Sandra Bullock stepped up to the desk, remembering the casual clothing and the unassuming manner. She had judged her so harshly, so quickly, never imagining it could be someone who was not only recognized worldwide, but who also had the moral fortitude to handle the situation with grace instead of anger. Back upstairs, in Sandra's suite, Keanu discovered a tray of fruit and chocolates delivered by the manager, an apologetic gesture. Sandra shook her head. This is nice, but it doesn't erase what happened. Keanu slid his hands into his pockets. At least we know the manager is making an effort. That receptionist, Heather, may face consequences, but hopefully she learns something crucial from this. Sandra stood by the large window, gazing down at the city lights, her reflection superimposed over the glimmering streets. It's just one night, she murmured, but these things leave a mark on everyone involved. Keanu walked over to stand beside her. Then maybe that mark will be a reminder, he said quietly, for her, and for us, about why kindness matters so much. Morning arrived with a hesitant sun breaking through the gray clouds. The storm had subsided, but a cool drizzle lingered. In the early light, La Majestic's grand lobby looked every bit as regal as it had the night before. Tall floral arrangements graced the marble tables, and staff moved about quietly, refreshing the space for the day's high-profile guests. Sandra Bullock rode the elevator down with Keanu Reeves, their overnight luggage in tow. She had a morning appointment, and he was accompanying her before heading to his own commitments. When the polished doors slid open, they found the lobby significantly quieter. Still, a hush fell as people recognized them. Whispers replaced the usual hustle and bustle. Mr. Williams hastened across the lobby to greet them. His smile was professional but tense. Ms. Bullock, Mr. Reeves, I hope you had a comfortable night. He cleared his throat, clearly remembering the chaotic scene from hours ago. Please accept once again our sincerest apologies. We have prepared a complimentary breakfast, or we'd be happy to arrange any other amenity. Sandra raised a polite hand, indicating that no further apologies were needed. I appreciate it, but I have a full day ahead. We'll be checking out. The manager nodded quickly, struggling to maintain composure. Of course, I understand. The car is waiting for you outside. They stepped toward the front desk to finalize the checkout process. Another receptionist was stationed there, a poised young man who greeted them with clear respect, avoiding any hint of the dismissive attitude that had spelled doom for Heather. He processed their details swiftly, speaking only when necessary. Sandra offered him a thankful nod. Just as they finished, Emily and David, the couple who had witnessed the incident the previous night, emerged from the lounge area. Spotting Sandra and Keanu, Emily approached hesitantly, as though worried she might be intruding. Good morning, she ventured. I'm sorry. I just wanted to say I admire your work. Her eyes darted from Sandra to Keanu, a blend of nerves and excitement. David hovered just behind her, equally in awe. Sandra smiled graciously. Thank you. Hope your stay here has been pleasant. Emily nodded, then glanced around as though recalling the confrontation. We saw what happened last night. It was quite something, she admitted. You handled it with real grace. Keanu gave a small nod in return. Thanks. Sometimes these moments show us how quickly we can jump to the wrong conclusion about people. Emily looked genuinely relieved to see them unbothered. Yeah, it was a lesson for everyone around. She and David waved goodbye, leaving Sandra and Keanu to complete their departure. Moments later, a doorman held the doors open, allowing them to exit into the brisk air. Outside, a black car with tinted windows idled at the curb. Raindrops clung to the vehicle's glossy surface as the driver stepped forward to assist with luggage. Sandra paused, gazing up at the grand facade of La Majestic one last time, reflecting on how a single encounter could reveal the best or worst in people. Across town, Heather was waking up in her small apartment, replaying the humiliating events in her mind. Her phone buzzed continuously, social media notifications, texts from coworkers, and messages from family and friends who had caught wind of the scandal. They all wanted details. She dreaded even looking. The shame was intense, but so was the sting of having thrown away a career opportunity that others would have treasured. The image of Keanu Reeves stepping in to defend Sandra Bullock replayed like a haunting clip she couldn't shut off. She hadn't just offended any random patron. She had tried to humiliate someone widely respected for both talent and kindness. And Keanu's calm authority? That would remain stuck in her mind, a stark reminder of her own flawed assumptions. At the hotel, Mr. Williams was already drafting an official statement. He had promised corporate that the situation would be addressed transparently. Plans were in motion to assure future guests that La Majestic upheld a standard of respect and equality for all. Additionally, word had spread among the staff. Heather would no longer be working there. Even if some part of Mr. Williams felt sorry for her, he knew the hotel's reputation demanded swift action. As Sandra and Keanu's car navigated the congested New York streets, Sandra scrolled through her phone. She stumbled upon the viral post capturing the incident, grainy photos of her standing at the check-in desk, looking calm, yet visibly frustrated. Keanu stood by her side like a quiet sentinel. Dozens of comments ranged from supportive to outraged. She sighed, unsure whether to address it publicly or let it fade like so many fleeting internet stories. Keanu glanced at her from the passenger seat. It's everywhere, isn't it? He asked gently. Sandra nodded. I'm just sorry it happened at all. But if it reminds even a few people not to judge on appearances, maybe some good comes out of it. Keanu rested his arm on the seat, looking thoughtful. It's like planting a seed. You never know where it might grow. They fell silent, turning their attention to the cityscape passing by. For Sandra, the day schedule would soon swallow her thoughts, filled with interviews, meetings, and the demands of public life. Yet the incident at La Majestic would linger like a cautionary tale of how quickly arrogance can backfire, and how decency, displayed at the right moment, can turn a humiliating situation into a moral lesson for everyone watching. Later that evening, Sandra Bullock found a quiet moment to reflect. She was in a backstage lounge before her scheduled appearance at a charity event. Her phone buzzed, and she glanced at the screen. A news alert featured the headline: Receptionist humiliates Sandra Bullock. Keanu Reeves steps in. Hotel issues official apology. Though the piece was largely sympathetic to her, she couldn't help feeling uneasy about the personal angle. Meanwhile, Heather trudged through the neon-lit streets of Midtown, wishing she could rewind time. She had been fired that morning, a brief and merciless conversation with Mr. Williams making it official. Now unemployed, she considered how her prejudice had undone her. The reflection in a dark storefront reminded her of the posture she wore the night before: proud, judgmental, confident that she held all the power. In less than 24 hours, that power had vanished, along with her reputation at La Majestic. In a small cafe, she collapsed into a chair and numbly scrolled through her phone. The messages and comments were relentless. Some mocked her arrogance. Others shared personal stories of being judged unfairly. A few expressed sympathy, but mostly condemnation. Heather placed the phone face down on the table. She thought about how Sandra Bullock barely reacted with anger. She could have humiliated Heather in return, but chose not to. That was the real sting. Across town, Keanu Reeves was wrapping up a business dinner. Slipping into a waiting car, he checked in with Sandra, sending a quick text. "Everything going okay?" Her reply was almost immediate. "Yes. Charity event about to start. Still can't believe last night. Hope you're good." He smiled faintly. The memory of Heather's stunned face came back to him, along with the knowledge that sometimes it takes a dramatic incident to expose hidden biases. He could only hope she would learn from it. At the charity event, bright lights and a red carpet greeted Sandra. Cameras flashed, fans cheered, and reporters shouted her name. She smiled graciously, every inch the composed celebrity. Internally, she recalled the hush of the La Majestic lobby, the disbelief in Heather's eyes when Keanu appeared. One intense moment had overshadowed her entire stay. Yet here she was carrying on, as she always did. The next day, Mr. Williams woke early, confronted by a wave of media requests. He planned to handle them carefully, hoping the story would fade if he avoided sensational headlines. A few staff members privately debated whether the punishment had been too severe, but the general consensus was that Heather's attitude could have led to multiple incidents. One employee quietly remarked, "It's unfortunate it happened this way, but maybe she'll realize how hurtful such actions are." By midday, an official statement circulated online. La Majestic deeply regrets the recent incident involving a former employee and a valued guest. We uphold a strict standard of dignity and respect for all who enter our establishment. The former employee's actions do not reflect our values, and we have taken prompt corrective measures. On social media, the story continued trending. People discussed everything from a moral lesson in not judging by appearances to praising Keanu Reeves for once again showcasing humility and kindness. Fans posted supportive messages for Sandra Bullock, pointing out how gracefully she had handled the ordeal. Others sympathized with the plight of customers everywhere who faced discrimination when they didn't look the part. As the chatter grew, Heather stayed off the internet, job hunting in the real world. Every interview felt tainted by the possibility that someone recognized her name from the scandal. A few prospective employers openly asked, "Aren't you the receptionist too?" She'd force a polite response, saying she'd learned her lesson. Whether they believed her or not, she couldn't tell. Meanwhile, Sandra finally found a break in her schedule to check the messages on her phone. Dozens were from friends concerned about the incident. One, from fellow actor, read, "Goes to show how you never know who's standing at your counter." It ended with a heart emoji, acknowledging that at least she was okay. Sandra typed a short, grateful response. She had no interest in personally calling out Heather or demanding further punishment. Life was complicated enough without harboring vendettas. By late afternoon, Keanu stopped by Sandra's hotel suite. This time, a different establishment that guaranteed her privacy. "Thought I'd say hi before I leave town," he said, offering her a smile that was both warm and a little weary. "Thanks for everything last night," Sandra told him softly, "though I wish it hadn't been necessary." He shrugged. "I was just doing what anyone decent would do. I'm sorry it turned into such a circus." Sandra exhaled. "Part of me feels bad for Heather. She lost her job, but also, she really earned that consequence. If there's a silver lining, maybe she reevaluates her perspective on people." Keanu nodded in agreement. "We can hope. You never know when an ugly incident might spark a positive change." With that, he gave her a brief hug and left for his own obligations, the memory of the previous night still lingering in both their minds. In the wake of that turbulent night, every person involved carried away a lesson. For Sandra Bullock, it served as yet another reminder that fame never fully insulates you from everyday prejudice, and that a simple choice of clothing can trigger judgments. For Keanu Reeves, it reaffirmed the power of stepping in calmly and firmly when someone faces unfair treatment. His quiet intervention highlighted that decency is often the strongest force in any conflict. Heather's life took the most drastic turn. Her arrogance at the reception desk cost her a position at one of New York's most prestigious hotels. As news of her blunder spread online, she had little choice but to confront the reality of her own behavior. Though the consequences were harsh, it was a wake-up call she could either learn from or ignore. Only time would tell if she allowed this downfall to shape her into someone more empathetic. La Majestic moved on, instituting training sessions emphasizing respect and impartiality. The management hoped to restore trust among elite clientele and any future guests who simply wandered in wearing casual clothes. Meanwhile, the public consumed the story through viral posts and headlines, occasionally using it as a talking point about courtesy, kindness, and how easily appearances can deceive. Ultimately, a random night of heavy rain in New York City became a catalyst for introspection. Fame collided with everyday prejudice, and two of Hollywood's most recognizable figures reminded the world that behind every ordinary hoodie and pair of sneakers might stand an extraordinary individual. Sometimes, a brief moment at a hotel counter is all it takes to shine a revealing light on human nature and the endless potential we have for growth when confronted with our missteps.